Alright, what's up, everybody? Richie Rich here, back at it again. This time with more of a Warhammer news report on an event that happened recently in the community. And although this was a bit of drama and divisive in the community, I wanted to make a video on it because I think that this ultimately led to improving the game, which I think is always important. Now, I want to preface by saying that I think Warhammer 40k is in a very interesting position due to the fact that while it's been competitive for a very long time and the competitive scene is quite old, I feel like it's not as developed as esports or some other competitive games like trading card games. And I think that's because of two reasons. Number one is due to the high level of subjectivity in Warhammer. A lot of the rules in Warhammer are having to be basically enforced by the players themselves. Of course, there's always TOs and judges as well, but in the middle of the action, it's really easy to forget certain rulings and even mix up some things, which I see actually happen quite a bit on competitive Warhammer 40k battle reports and even in some tournament live streams. So that's number one. Number two is just the fact that you have to physically do everything yourself. Even in a game in chess, you there's limitations in objective movement. So you can't move a pawn like half a square. You have to move it a full square. But in Warhammer, because you're actually physically measuring out inches, it leads some subjectivity. Also, sometimes people just hit the terrain. I see this all the time on stream. Sometimes people hit the terrain, they knock over their own models, and they have to pick them back up. And players could very easily take advantage of this by doing movement tricks, eking out movement, shifting the terrain. And even sometimes I see on stream competitive players, they might be like a quarter of an inch off, and they'll just be like, "Don't worry about it. You can just make the charge, or you can just shoot at him. If that was your intent, it's not a big deal." And ultimately, Warhammer was never designed as a competitive game, so it makes sense for these rules and problems to occur, especially since this is more of a game that even competitive players feel is a hobby and a passion more so than a truly competitive sport. I know that that's not for everybody. I know that for some people, Warhammer is super competitive, and they approach it in the same mindset that they would approach sports. But I think the majority of players could agree that due to the high subjectivity of Warhammer, that it makes things very difficult when you're trying to treat it as an objective sport. At the same time, the community has now developed a lot, and the rulings and things are much more better, so that we can find that there are players who are objectively better than others due to the vast improvements in the game, the organizers and the events themselves. In this situation, what happened is that essentially a player was penalized for scoring less than he could have. Now, I'm going to preface this by first explaining why he would want to do this, and then we'll go over the player perspective. If you're in the competitive 40k Warhammer group, then you've probably already heard about this and you've actually seen this post yourself. So, the reason why he was purposely scoring low is that what he was doing is that he was winning the game and then scoring low on victory points so that he could be paired against a weaker player. Because in this specific tournament, and actually in a lot of tournaments, players are organized where the top scoring player is played off against the other top scoring player in that group. So in essence, by having a high win rate but scoring less, you're putting yourself at an advantage because then it's easier to move on to the next round. So what Manny did essentially was he was like tabling the opponent, and then he would just not score as much as he can. He would just score enough to win the game, and basically that's it. Just keep ending his turn. This is a very divisive issue even for me, but especially for the community, as a lot of people had mixed opinions. Ultimately, what happened is that in the fourth round, for what he did in game one, he was that fourth round game that he was playing, where he was up 100, as he says himself, he was up 100 to 17. The tournament organizers said, "All right, you got to take a auto loss on that game for what you did in game one," and Manny was clearly upset because technically he did not cheat, as in he wasn't rolling fake dice. He wasn't making up fake rules. He wasn't cheating in your conventional sense that we see people cheat, especially in wargaming games and also trading card games where people do sleight of hand and stuff like that. So he was clearly upset and posted it on Facebook where it was very divisive. So there was a lot of people standing up for Manny, and there was also a lot of people standing up for the tournament organizers. I myself am very split on this issue as well, as me and my brother are super competitive in any form of gaming. We've been competitive in StarCraft 2. After that, I really kind of stopped video gaming, but I used to be very, very competitive in playing Dota All Stars. My brother is still very competitive in playing Valorant, and he was essentially an amateur pro in StarCraft 2 and in Dota 2 as well. He actually even got to play for OpenAI. Now, the competitive player in me is like, Manny did nothing wrong because, man, at the end of the day, in a competitive game, what you're trying to do is trying to maximize your everything. You want to basically put everything into your advantage to win the game, and he technically did nothing that's considered cheating. He technically just did something that was considered unsportsmanlike. On the other hand, I used to run StarCraft 2 tournaments in the early days of the StarCraft 2 beta and the inception of StarCraft 2. I can understand that tournaments, you don't really want players to win a tournament by gaming the system. That really doesn't do a whole lot for the game either, and it puts a bad taste in a lot of players' mouths who don't have that same philosophy of approaching competitive gaming. And also in ITC, they do have a spirit of the game code of conduct sort of player expectation ruling, which allows tournament organizers to make these sorts of rulings. So it's not like the tournament organizer went out of his way to give Manny the loss. He was well within his means to do so. Now, the tournament organizer also put out a post on Reddit, which got a lot of traction, which again was a little controversial. Some people, again, defending Manny and saying that the TO should not have been running the pairing system in the first place, and a lot of people also supporting the the TO, and saying that it doesn't matter what systems they're running, players should basically self-regulate and know the difference between right and wrong, essentially. Now, again, where it's confusing is that the right and wrong is very gray in a subjective game like Warhammer 40k, as I personally feel like the meta for competitive organizations and tournaments and just the format of the game is still being developed. So the tournament organizer did have a lot of things to say. He said that he did make a lapse in judgment by when he first saw the behavior, he should have issued a formal warning. That would have at least let Manny know what was going on. But then he said that he proceeded to see Manny essentially like keep units in deep strike and not deploy them by turn 3 so that they would just die and he would lose his while we stand we fight points, and basically just he was just like tabling his opponent and he wouldn't score anything. Like he would just score like 40 points and then call it a game and just keep ending his turn. So, he was like moving off objectives. He's letting units in reserve die, and I can see that. That's not really a way that you want players to be playing. It's not a lot of fun. You don't want a guy just you don't want to play against a guy, just get tabled and then watch him not score points. That's not a lot of fun for you. So I understand that. Now, the good thing is that these two made a video together and they talk about ways that they can improve on the Warhammer 40k pairing that they sorry it was actually a pairing system from Beast Coast pairing, so they can improve the pairing system and instead moving forward use a randomized pairing system so that submarining is not an issue. And I think that the majority of tournaments and people organizing events in the future will move towards doing randomized pairing, which I think ultimately is a good thing. So ultimately, these two, they had I think they created an incident where, although it's unfortunate the way that things played out initially, in the end, it's gonna move to uh, a future of Warhammer competitive gaming where now, instead of having this system where that can be abused and we have all this gray area and subjectivity, we can see tournaments run more smoother by having this randomized pairing. That way we can have even more objectivity, which is good in competitive gaming. Objectivity is something that you actually want in competitive gaming. If people don't know what the clear and concise rules are in a competitive game, then you cannot blame them for taking advantage of things that were not clearly established. again, in this case, I think this is why it's so controversial and the community was very divided. I would love to hear what you guys think about this issue as well. Leave a comment below. Do you think, I think ultimately, personally, both parties had a bit of, they both had a bit of culpability. The TO definitely, he himself admitted that he should have issued a formal warning against this. And I think Manny also should have deep down maybe, if he knew this organization, because it's, they said that they're actually friends outside of the organization. He might have wanted to clear up this strategy with the TOs before running it, and maybe, you know, think about if this would actually have been under the ITC spirit of the game. Ultimately, though, it looks like great things are coming ahead from this, and yeah, it'll be awesome that randomized pairing will be the future of tournaments, so that we don't see things like submarining happening again. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, everybody. As always, keep those dice rolling. Thanks again for all the likes, the comments, and the subs. I love seeing the comments as well. I love to communicate with you guys, get your thoughts on my videos, and I love talking to you guys on YouTube as well. So thanks again for watching. As always, keep those dice rolling, and you guys stay safe out there.